God has given me, and I know who I am. We are a chosen generation. We are a chosen generation. All God to show His best. Wonderful Wednesday morning to all our listeners locked on to Hope 103.1 FM. God has given me, and I know who I am. It's another beautiful Wednesday morning. What He says I am. And we are here another day for the downloads God has for us in this session of Leadership Plus with Reverend John Lewis. I know who I am. I'm walking in power. I'm walking in miracles. I live a life of favor because I know who I am. I'm walking in power. Good morning, Reverend John, and how are you today?
With you today and this beautiful day in Grenada. It's a lovely morning here, and we look forward to a wonderful discussion today.
Yes, we do. Before we go any further, I just want to say thank you to you for this wonderful program and this initiative that you've taken to share with us these wonderful scriptures and these principles found in the Word of God. So thank you for Leadership Plus. I just thought it was nice that and important that we should, really do it. When I thought about some of the things I've learned, and I'm sure some of our listeners will have learned as well, it would be very wise to say thank you.
Thank you very much. Yes, you've just added value to me right there.
Thank God for that. All right. Amen. So today we're discussing under the topic priorities of a decision and decision making. When I look at the life of Jesus, you know, you see that his life was focused and very intentional. His lifestyle demonstrated those qualities. And in fact, today's text in question, Matthew 23 to 24, it shows Jesus' priority and his focus. I also remember a statement made by Reverend Dave King. We got to keep the main business, the main business. Could you elaborate on today's topic, priorities and decision making?
Absolutely. Thank you again. So priorities and decision making actually has to do with making the most of your time. And the scripture that we referred to, Matthew 23:24, states, you strain out in a gnat but swallow a camel. That's quite a statement at how we can become very picky about things that are not important and lose focus on the priorities and decisions that we need to make. So this context from which we are launching our discussion today, we need to understand, how can I get more out of a day? All of us have 24 hours. It doesn't matter whether you're the prime minister or whether you're the president or whether you're a bishop or archbishop, chief bishop. We have acquired so many titles that we get confused sometimes. But the question is, how can I get the most out of the time, the equal time that God has given to us? So there were some questions here that we'd like to just briefly ask you, and those who are online with us today. Uh, you can put a check mark to some of these questions. I did the exercise before coming
I
in.
did. Yeah, I did it as well. It was very interesting.
Great, great. So the first question, do you plan tomorrow's work today? And I trust that you have a yes to that one.
Yes, I did. Yeah,
Great,
have
great.
to.
Yes. We cannot wait till the tomorrow comes activity.
Right.
Do you perform routine chores um, at your daily low energy times or creative tasks at your high peak time? So all of us do have a high energy time. Some of us get up going early in the morning, and sometimes that's our high peak.
Right.
Some of us are dragging out of bed. So some of us, that's a low energy, and some of us can stay up till midnight,
Yes.
and we still have energy 10 o'clock, 11 o'clock, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's, how do we allocate the more creative projects when we really have our peak.
Right.
And I trust you have a yes at that as well.
Yes, yes.
And do you get unpleasant duties out of the way as soon as possible? Now, that's a kind of tricky
Yeah, it
question.
was. I thought so too. I said, but I don't know if it's unpleasant duties, because if it has to be done, it has to be done.
Right. Sometimes you have to deal with a difficult
Yeah,
person
yeah, true.
or some issue that is
Mm-hmm,
happening as you go to bed.
mm-hmm,
And the tendency for us is to put off those duties
mm-hmm.
and to make them become the last item on our daily agenda. But
True.
the recommendation is that, you know, deal with those, get
Mm-hmm,
them out of the way, handle them, handle the conflict, and so the rest of the day is more productive.
mm-hmm.
And number four, do you mentally preview the day's work at the beginning of the day? So as you get up in your day, you think ahead of what the day may look like. Of course,
Mm-hmm.
there are interventions, there are obstructions sometimes, no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
And but if we are prepared for the day,
Mm-hmm.
we can handle those interruptions that
Mm-hmm.
may affect us. So I
Mm-hmm.
trust you have a yes for that. Are you able to deal with people who waste your time?
Oh boy. I had to pause. I had to pause and I get by that one.
Yeah, it's a sensitive issue.
It is. It
But
is.
how do you graciously schedule your day so
Yeah.
that people don't take advantage? The challenge is here, if you have really strategized your day,
Mm-hmm.
you don't have time for time wasters,
Mm-hmm.
because you can easily say to persons who may think that you have all the time in the world,
Mm-hmm.
we have only 10 minutes to do this, or 15
Mm-hmm.
minutes, because you have something else
Mm-hmm.
that you have already planned for. So um, you do not allow people to set your agenda for your days.
Very
If
true.
we don't, if you don't do that, people will set your agenda for you.
That's right. Very true.
Yeah,
Because they would say I have chick not chack based on their perception of your life, but
right.
they don't
Yeah,
know.
yeah. So it helps you to
Yeah.
manage your time as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, And do you know how to log your time? That is, occasionally write down how long it takes to accomplish each day's task.
Mm-hmm.
So there's time blocks. Basically, we have 1 hour on
Mm-hmm.
this program, so we know that's projected schedule on
Mm-hmm.
Wednesday. So that is prioritized for this program.
Mm-hmm.
And like everything else, do you have a time block when you're going to um, do your evaluation and
Mm-hmm.
do your thinking. And we'll get to that. Do you have a think time in your daily schedule? What do you plan and strategize? And then when you promise that you'll get something done on time, and the emphasis here is on time, do
Mm-hmm.
you always try to keep your word?
Mm-hmm.
So that comes with how do you plan your time, so that if you promise that by this particular date that you're going to deliver what you promise, whether it's a project that you're working on,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's getting a chore done,
Mm-hmm.
whether it's to write your
Mm-hmm.
book that you've been thinking about for years now.
Mm-hmm.
When is that going to be finished?
Mm-hmm.
Those things as well. Do you set aside a portion of each day to think, create, and plan? So I was coming to that.
Yeah.
If we do not think and create and plan, or we can waste a lot of the time that God has given to us.
Mm-hmm.
Because it just helps you to think ahead in terms of, if you're in a training program,
Right.
if you are the lecturer, how do you prepare for your class? If you're a student, how do you come prepared to your training sessions? If
Mm-hmm.
you're how you prepare in advance for the content and messaging of your program.
Mm-hmm.
And is your workplace tidy?
Yes.
Uh, can you find what you need without wasting time? some of us are better than others at this. That if we're looking for something, we have to dig up the whole bag, or the whole drawer.
The bag is a different thing, eh?
That's or you have to look all over the house to find this thing. But
Yeah.
there's some folks who are so well organized. They are filed away, and they know how to find this document. They know to find this, and
Mm-hmm.
it really makes life easier. Of course, one of our mentors to many people is John Maxwell. He would say they would ask him, "How can you write a book every month almost?"
Mm.
So what he says that whatever he reads and he thinks is important, he would copy it
Right.
and he would create folders.
Mm.
Now you could do it on your computer, you create a file and probably, or if
Mm-hmm.
it's a hard document or something, he cuts it out. Probably, of course, he has secretaries and helpers, and he would title a particular folder and
Mm-hmm.
drop that in there. And
Okay.
as it builds up over a period of time, he has material already
Mm-hmm.
that he could draw upon.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just an exercise that if we are thinking of writing a research issue, a topic,
Mm-hmm.
to create that. Um, do you have an efficient filing? It comes to that same system of how we do. Um, and do you know how to choose your most productive tasks? So we have many tasks on our list,
Mm-hmm.
but what it is that you want to be most productive and how do we prioritize that?
Mm-hmm.
So they would recommend to us that we have a one, two, three, and the rest is. And so we attempt the one, two, three, and get those done for a particular season.
Yeah.
Then do you know exactly what your top priorities are? So it builds in on each question, just builds
Mm-hmm.
on each hour. I don't know if I should ask you what was your score, but I
It's okay.
hope
I
you
was
have
in the 10 to 12. I was in the 10 to 12, the first
right,
session. Yeah,
right. It
I
says if you
can't,
answer.
yeah, I can't really go on without thinking far enough and long enough. I have to think.
Mhm.
And these questions, they were very good and they helped me to examine and analyze where I was. I enjoyed it.
Right. So if you got 10 to 12 questions, yes, you handle your time excellently. If you had 7 to 9, you're good, but still need to grow.
Mm-hmm.
If 6 or below, you're wasting valuable time and may not even know it. So
Mm-hmm.
these are some questions to think through and to ask yourself. And so here's a question. What are some areas in your day where you can improve? Evaluation.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it is not at the end of the day we're asking ourselves, where has the time gone?
Mm-hmm.
And that's a question that many people may ask at the
You
end
said
of a
you.
day
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or the end of a week. Yeah.
Yeah, you said something that was very important a little earlier on. We have to be careful of how we use the time that has given us, and He has given us some time for a specific reason. Yes, and as you're mentioning, these are some of the ways that we, will find the best use of that time that we have been given. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. So on building on top of those questions, there are some priorities. It talks about the priority that Jesus had. Very early in the morning, he would get up and he would have communion with the Father.
Yeah.
And that's a principle for all good leaders, a time of reflection, time to hear what God is saying to us as Christian leaders.
Mm-hmm.
Um, what is your priority? Jesus understood that very well. What is the priority of
Mm-hmm.
church leaders, and what are the distractions,
Mm-hmm.
and those kind of issues as reflected on. So there are some principles. Many of us and many listening understand this principle. It's called the 80-20 principle.
Mm-hmm.
It is often referred to as the Pareto Principle. 80% of the people do 20% of the work, kind of vice versa. 20% of the people do 80% of the work, which is unfortunate, but it seems as though that's a
Mm-hmm.
generic principle. Probably just to describe those a little bit for us today. The 80-20 principle teaches us that if we focus our attention on our most important activities, we gain the highest return on our effort. In fact, if we tend to the top 20% of our important priorities, we'll accomplish 80% of the results that we desire. So there are the priorities and their results. If we focus on the priorities, which is the most important priorities, then we can accomplish 80% of the work that we have mapped out. If you embrace the wrong priorities, that principle will work against you. 80% of the effort will gain you 20% of the result and fruit you desire. So sometimes we can waste a lot of our time on the secondary issues or the things that are not so very important. And then we lose out on accomplishing the 20% that are at the top. That should be at the top of our priorities.
Right.
Here's an example of how this works. An example how we use our time. 20% of our time produces 80% of the result. But that is maximizing that 20%. It would take another area of counseling. 20% of the people take up 80% of our time. So it's a minority of persons that takes the majority of our time. In terms of our work, 20% of our effort gives us 80% of our satisfaction. In terms of ministries, 20% of the ministries provide 80% of the fruit. Leadership, 20% of the people make 80% of the decisions. It's always the priorities. This goes to 80% of the ministry. Mentoring, 20% of the influencers are where you should invest your time. So it really challenges us in terms of where we put our emphasis, where we base our priorities, so that we're not using our priorities in terms of the areas that are not producing the results that we intend to have. So we have to determine primarily what is our priorities regarding time, work, ministry, leadership, mentoring. Those are critical areas where we maximize our priorities and put the 20% of our time. So as we would say, we don't use 2x4 plank to swat the fly. We're using energy and material that is not producing great results.
Right.
We maximize and prioritize the things that are critical to get done in a particular time frame, in a particular day. Of course, days make up the week, weeks make up the month, and we ask ourselves at the end of a day, end of a week, of a month, even sometimes at the end of the year when we do an evaluation, what have we done productively, for the last week or last month, last year. So that's a criticism that we have to keep in mind as we look at making decisions and keeping our priorities in the right place.
Right. In making priorities, I think I read in the text that Jesus's priority was people, right?
Yeah.
To make priorities for our own lives, should that also be the precedents that we use? People's spiritual growth, how do we go about setting those personal priorities?
Of course. So, we talked earlier about the importance of understanding the human capital and the value of and that's what Jesus demonstrated for us. His priority was people, and he started with the individual. He would go out of his way to communicate and to impact and to change an individual's life. Even as he called these 12 disciples in the first case, He went out, we would say, out of his way to reach them. And sometimes he would reach people that perhaps sometimes is not attractive in the sense of, the potential
Mm-hmm.
of see them. A favorite quote is that God does not choose us for who we are, but for what we can become.
Yeah.
And so he always sees the potential
Mm-hmm.
in people, and he
Right.
saw that. And the trust is that we would have that same discernment
Right.
to understand and to see the potential in people, not necessarily of where they are, but
Mm-hmm.
where they can be, in how we encourage them, how we give the mentorship to them, how we provide the human value in order that they might become the person that they were
Mm-hmm.
intended.
Mm-hmm.
So
Right.
those was of
Mm-hmm.
the issues
Mm-hmm.
Christ dealt.
Right.
And then some of the lessons that we can learn from this principle, and this is important discussion for us today. And number one is that activity does not equal accomplishment.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, busyness does not necessarily mean productivity.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
Very true.
we can be running around. Sometimes we say like a chicken without its head.
That's true. Going nowhere fast.
Absolutely. And says your goal should not be simply to stay busy. Look for the wisest people and places to invest your time. So you have to choose wisely.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so you ask for divine direction,
All
divine
right.
guidance in terms of the people that you associate. People
Mm-hmm.
um, with us, the law of momentum or the law of relationship, the law of association
Mm-hmm.
indicate that people tend to follow people um, that they're, or you attract. The law of attraction also is one of the laws that Maxwell talks about. You attract people that are like you in some ways.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so you have to be the leader that you would follow. And one of the questions that is very personal and insightful is that would you follow you? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
When you look at your life as a leader, as an individual,
Mm-hmm.
follow you
Mm-hmm.
in all that you do, where would you end up? So it's a challenge. How do we lead ourselves? Because we cannot lead others to a place that we want to take them if we are not willing to be there
Mm-hmm.
and in the process of going there for
Mm-hmm.
ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
So do not become bombarded with the activity that you dashing from one thing to the other and think that busyness is a sign of productivity.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so we have to evaluate where do we give our time to, or who do we give our time to,
Mm-hmm.
and so how do we maximize the best use, and what activity because when we have determined our priorities, we can say no to the request
Mm-hmm.
made of us that is not part of our priority.
Mm-hmm.
There are many requests for all kinds of joining Zoom meetings, especially now. I'm sure you're bombarded with
Mm-hmm.
all these requests on your chat groups. Sign into this class or sign into this program, taking up this offer,
Mm-hmm.
and unfortunately, some of these offers are not genuine,
Mm-hmm.
and some people have been bitten
Mm-hmm.
to take advantage of the lockdown and make money out of it
Yeah. Yeah.
falsely and do not offer what they promised on these offers that looks very
Mm-hmm.
important and interesting that you can benefit from. So when we have said yes to the things that we prioritize, we always have a good answer, and we can say a good no to
Mm-hmm.
the things that people may ask of our time and ask of the resources that we want to use wisely in God's kingdom. And then work smarter, not harder. Right? So the favorite example is that of cutting down a tree. And the question was asked, I think was one of the presidents, if you had 7 hours to cut down a huge tree, how much time would you take to sharpen your axe? And the response, I would take 5 hours to sharpen,
Right.
uh, and then the tree could be cut down in 2 hours. I mean, we
Right.
tend to do the reverse.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, we figure we could chop away at the tree and spend, um, 5 hours in chopping, and
Hmm.
takes all the effort and energy. Probably still we may not get the
Right.
particular task done
Right.
because we are uses with tools
Mm-hmm.
that are not equipped for particular tasks.
Mm-hmm.
So, how do we acquire the skills to accomplish the tasks more smartly, more efficiently,
Mm-hmm.
and how to become more effective in what you do as
Mm-hmm.
a leader? So, we have to sharpen the skills to acquire the tools, and very often we have to invest in the tools as well. It costs you something to acquire
Mm-hmm.
good tools and good
Mm-hmm.
skills.
Mm-hmm.
You buy some good materials, you invest in a leadership program, you invest in workshops that are helping you
Mm-hmm.
to achieve your goals and acquire the skills that you need. And so you have to invest to become a smarter person in the field that you are involved in, whether it's in radio broadcast or training, or whether you're in a business
Mm-hmm.
environment. How do you, as a business leader, acquire the skills that are so necessary now
Yeah.
in this pandemic?
Yeah.
We cannot do ministry, business, government the same way 2 years ago. That
Exactly.
was all or most of our meetings is Zoom business meetings, government meetings,
Mm-hmm.
even budget meetings. You're invited on a budget platform to
Mm-hmm.
discuss a government budget. So how do we use these platforms efficiently?
Mm-hmm.
All of our training and for guide in this sense is on Zoom. So students have to become equipped with the internet and the tools that we need to have effective discussions and training.
Mm-hmm.
And how do we work? Working smarter means working on what you can do
Mm-hmm.
and delegating things others can do. What good is it to work extremely hard when it accomplishes little?
True.
So, we can sweat ourselves out, we can um, be drained of energy and resources
Mm-hmm.
at the end of the day or the end of a week and have not accomplished what we really had set out to do. And so, one of the principles that comes in here is how do you find the team members and to delegate
Mm-hmm.
responsibilities,
Mm-hmm.
delegate things to others that they can do better than you can.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, for example, you may not be the technical skill person. You may have people in your team or even outside of your team that are skilled in these particular skills, and you involve their skills. So
Mm-hmm.
you're not wasting time trying to figure out, you
Mm-hmm.
know, technical skills that others have already,
Yeah.
and so include them and even um, involve them in your leadership program. So work smarter, not harder. Um, and how do we accomplish that? By delegation and in terms of how we work.
Mm-hmm.
And then number three says organize, and listen to this one, organize or agonize.
Mm.
So
True.
you could either organize yourself, plan well, prepare well, or
Mm.
you can
I don't know.
agonize
Yeah.
in the process.
Mm-hmm.
If you're not organized, then it can become more efficient in getting things done.
Mm-hmm.
In turn, will give you a lot of time. Um, it will save you time and frustration. So preparation, preparation, preparation.
Definitely.
It may look like a small task that you're asked to do, but you can do it more quickly, more efficiently if you prepare.
Mm-hmm.
And we've seen that in so many areas of life as people come prepared for an event. Um, Now that's become a whole field of business,
Mm-hmm.
event managers,
Mm-hmm.
you know, planners,
Mm-hmm.
and pay a lot of money
Yeah. Yes.
to involve event planners in an event that you're doing. But
Mm-hmm.
these are people who have honed the skills and they can take an event that you have in your mind, in your dream,
Mm-hmm.
and make it look so easy
Yes.
and execute it
Mm-hmm.
um, very well. So we include those people in the organization of what you do.
Mm-hmm. Ladies and
But it
gentlemen,
is not.
oh, I'm not hearing. Were you saying something? Sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Uh, so we're saying you have to include others in your
Mm-hmm.
organization.
Mm-hmm. Ladies and gentlemen, we are speaking with Reverend John Lewis and we're discussing under the topic priorities and decision making. And we're, diving into some information that shows us the importance of setting the right priorities that enables us to make the most and the best use of time. So if you have any questions and or comments, you can send them in on 403-1031, or you can view us and join us on the YouTube and Facebook platforms. Could you continue, Reverend, speaking about our priorities?
Great, thank you. So number 4 says evaluate or stagnate. Determine where you stand in relation to your goal is very important. To move to the next level of leadership, you must evaluate your current situation. So evaluation, and as we talked earlier on about an assessment, whether it's a personal assessment or an organizational assessment, evaluation of where you are in your personal life, of course, as an individual. Sometimes we assess where we are in order to go to the next level or the next stage in our personal growth and personal development. If we do not do serious and thorough evaluation, we just keep continuing on the same path that perhaps will lead us, to a
Mm-hmm.
destination that we don't want to end up.
Mm-hmm.
And that applies to every area of life, whether you are a student,
Mm-hmm.
whatever you are, whether you're in secondary school or college or universities, and you are a student, you have to assess: Am I going to aim for an A in this course, or I'm going to settle for whatever grade I get? I just want to pass this. And so you can determine where you want to end up in a particular course or study,
Mm-hmm.
a program of study. In the same way, if a church leader do not assess and evaluate their church or the organization, where we are today after 10, 15 years, perhaps as a church organization,
Mm-hmm.
we cannot determine where we want to be in the next 5 years. Business as well. That's why they do stock taking.
Right.
And businesses are closing 1, 2 days
Mm-hmm.
every so often because
Mm-hmm.
they want to see whether they're making profit or
Right.
whether they're losing.
Mm-hmm.
And wise businessmen do that in
Right.
order to close the place. It
Mm-hmm.
looks like they're losing money that
Yes.
particular
Yes.
day, but unless they do that, they probably don't realize they're losing money.
That's what I was
And
just thinking, Stock taking might look like something that you're losing, or you're losing customers, you're losing, the profitability of it. What is it? You're losing 2 days' work. But at the end of it, it will pay off. Just as, planning. You you will plan, it gives you time to free up your creativity in the end, So it's good to take stock taking as you're just
uh,
pointing out to us.
otherwise, you tend to stagnate. You tend to
Yeah,
remain same
yeah.
place.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the cycle of leadership, we may climb quickly on top of the curve, as it were,
Mm-hmm.
and if we're not careful, we stagnate and level off, and then you begin to decline.
Mm-hmm.
Like this down,
Yeah.
as plateau, as it were. As we get to our first plateau stage, we develop another plateau stage that we move up on a different level. whether it's in a business, whether it's in a church. So an evaluation of, where are we today?
Mhm.
We cannot have, hundreds of people, in an activity or in involvement. So
Mhm.
how do we manage that?
Mhm.
Evaluate. Well, we must develop these platforms. So while we cannot have regular numbers of people within our
Mhm.
company
Mhm.
organization,
Mhm.
yet it's a worldwide, opportunity to reach hundreds of other people
Mhm.
on a platform that you can become creative with. So evaluate and do not stagnate. And then number 7 is that schedule your priorities. We talked a little about that. Control your day, or your day will control you.
Mhm.
So you particularly set out that, this is wake up time or this is breakfast time, and what you want to accomplish, during these hours, how much time you're going to prepare and study.
Mhm.
Um, don't fill your day filling the request of others, because that can become a habit.
Mhm.
And if you do not fill your day with others, you will be invited to join this, or invited to come to this, or invited
Mhm.
to their agenda.
Mhm.
So what you can spend your life filling other people's agenda,
Mhm. Very true.
helping them accomplish their priorities,
Mhm.
and get stuck um, if we don't. The issue is not prioritizing your schedule, but scheduling your priorities. So probably I should say that again.
Yes.
The issue is not prioritizing your schedule, but scheduling your priorities. And that is so critical. So, first of all, you have to know what your priorities are.
Mhm.
And then, number 6, um,
Mhm.
reacting is not leading. Um, when you lose control, you're no longer acting as a leader, but instead reacting to the urgent. If you forget the ultimate, you will become a slave to the immediate.
Mhm.
Yeah. So generally, we tend to be reactive. Something happens, and um, we respond to it and react to it, rather than being proactive and thinking that, situations, that's the way things may look like, and you're thinking ahead of what um, may happen or
Mhm.
what can happen, so you're not caught off guard, as it were.
Mhm.
So we become reactive in every situation. We're not leading.
Right.
We're just responding to the crisis
Mhm.
and to the circumstances that
Mhm.
affect us and impinge upon us.
Mhm.
How we think ahead, even during this pandemic,
Mhm.
um, basic thinking ahead of what the weekend is going to look like, especially in Grenada where
Mhm.
there's how do you prepare?
Mhm.
Because for us in Grenada, you know that after 5 o'clock on a Friday evening, you're locked in till Monday morning, 5
Yes.
a.m.
Yes.
Hopefully, that does not continue for much
Oh
longer.
Lord, help us.
So then you have to determine what you're going to do with those lockdown days
Yes. Yes.
and use them productively.
Mhm.
Or run out and do the normal things.
Mhm.
So,
Mhm.
how to become proactive in terms of taking leadership to a different level.
Mhm.
Um, being locked down gives you the opportunity to read a good book,
Yes,
right?
that's exactly my thought. That's what I do. I try to read a little bit more.
Some books that persons have bought, they're stacked up somewhere.
Mhm. Mhm.
And we all have books that, we looked at and we were attracted to it, but
Mhm.
they're sitting somewhere in a
True.
box still.
Very,
Yes.
very true.
Yes. So
Very
pull
true.
out
I'm
book.
guilty of that. I'm guilty.
Yes. Yes. Guilty as well. And but it enables us to have our own personal reading time and development
Mhm.
as well.
Mhm.
And then say no to little things. Leaders must say no to the little things so that they can say yes to the big things. If someone else can do it,
Mhm.
delegate it. So
Mhm.
different levels of leadership and different kinds of leaders.
Mhm.
And as we accomplish, as it were, the big picture,
Mhm.
and we cast it at people that helps you to fill in the pieces of the puzzle, as it were. So within your team building, there are people who are very meticulous. They sometimes the leader who has the big picture may not see all the things that are necessary in terms of the details and the minute things that we may overlook. And so you need people like that on your team. The people who would keep you accountable and says, look, this is the vision we offer. This is what we started out to do as an organization and where we are. And that's calls for evaluation. And then there's a person who is a finisher.
Yeah.
Um, so many things have been started and great ideas have been started up. And we know that they are stopped somewhere in the middle of the way.
We really
And
have to appreciate the wisdom of God, in putting all these different capabilities in different people. I remember Moses, as Moses had so many things in him and on him. It took over 70 men for God to
right.
take some responsibilities and delegation on these men. I mean, the wisdom of God is amazing. I want to take this opportunity to say hello and blessings to the people who are logging on from the United Kingdom, across the United States, all our listeners here in Grenada, and on our platforms. God bless you, and thank you for joining us as we continue to participate in this wonderful and informative chat on leadership with Reverend John Lewis.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So sometimes the little word,
Mhm.
two-letter word no is hard
Mhm.
to say. Um,
Sure.
yes?
Mhm.
Right. So how do we define priority? Here's some pointers for us. When we know who we are, what our gifts are, and what our calling is, it's much easier to determine the yes and no of life.
Mhm.
When a task would not further your goal, you need to just say no. The way you say no is just as important as deciding to say it. Yes. So say no to the idea, not to the person. So
Mhm.
we have to clarify that
Mhm.
because sometimes the person that you saying no to may take it personally
Yeah.
and probably feel that you're slighting them or you're rejecting their invitation.
Mhm.
So we have to differentiate what is the idea that the person is talking about. Make sure the person understands that you're not rejecting them. You're simply saying no to what you want to do. Give the idea a fair chance, even if it doesn't fit into the things that you need to accomplish.
Mhm.
So there's so many brilliant ideas out there. I mean, all kinds of ideas are thrown at us these days.
Mhm.
Join this, sign up for this, come to this,
Mhm.
participate with this.
Very true.
And people sometimes get a little offended if they don't see you on their platforms.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
the question is, how many platforms can you be on at the same time? I know some people try to do two platforms at the same time.
Mhm. Hmm.
It's sad to even sign on to your platform, but like children, we are not there in school.
True.
It's like teachers are asking, John a question,
Mhm.
and all these is John signed on, but John is kicking ball outside.
Yes. Yes.
And unfortunately, it happens to adults as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you have to determine how do
Mhm.
you say no to the idea. It's a great idea, and they can accomplish the idea, and they may not necessarily need your help to accomplish the idea,
Mhm.
but you do not reject the idea. You affirm the idea. That is a great thing that you're doing. From a Christian perspective, offer your prayers and support if you think that is important to them.
Mhm.
But just to say to the person, I appreciate what you're doing, but I cannot participate because of other priorities that you have at that particular time.
Right.
And then respond in terms of the best interests of the person asking. Make sure the person knows that you are not just choosing the easy response, but
Mhm.
that you want to genuinely help them. Communicate that your time constraints would actually prevent you from doing the kind of work they deserve. Right? So that's an important point to make.
Mhm.
That if we say yes to every request, we cannot give adequate time
Mm-hmm.
to fulfill the request that people make of us. Because the person that is making the request do not know how many other requests have been made of us.
Mm-hmm. True.
They assume that perhaps their request is the only one,
Mm-hmm.
because for that person or that organization, that is priority for them, and they may think that
Mm-hmm.
you probably just sitting around, just wasting time.
Yeah.
And so let's see if we could get him or her on board.
Mm-hmm.
But to respond with a sense that if I say yes to you, I may not be able to give you what you need to accomplish your goal. And that's
Mm-hmm.
just being honest with the person, rather than having the person feel a sense of rejection
Yeah.
or feeling, belittled or becomes annoyed with you because you're not responding to their call. So it really that we need. And then we have to defer creatively, come up with an alternative. So if we say no to you, you can also make recommendation. For example, a person may ask you to do something or become involved in a
Mm-hmm.
project, and you can be creative in your responses. Look, I'm not the best person for your meeting your requests.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not skilled, I'm not equipped, I'm not trained in this particular field.
Mm-hmm.
But here's a good person I would like to recommend you to. Um, I have a friend, or I know someone, I know another organization that that is their priority, that may be fit to accomplish. And so all along, you're really adding value to the other person's request or person's organization. In my case, people may ask you to speak at a particular event with a particular focus, and I could graciously say, no, that is not my
Yeah.
field of
Yeah.
study or my
Yeah.
field of preparation. But
Mm-hmm.
here's another person. This
Yeah.
person is well skilled and well equipped in this particular field. Why don't you give them a call and make connect with them?
Mm-hmm.
So defer creatively, come up with alternative suggestions to people that you cannot
Mm-hmm.
Great. So on making the most of your time, uh, we call it a do list, right? We sometimes write that down as a to-do list, and we list things that we want to accomplish. We want to write things in terms of the order and priorities that they come. If you're doing a shopping list, you probably don't need to do that. Everything should be on the list that you're going shopping for in terms of groceries or whatever. But when you put in projects and activities and things that you want to accomplish, write out what you want to accomplish. Some of us try to get away from doing that, and we think we can um, depend upon the memory power that
Mm-hmm.
we have, and only forget that even if we've gone out for the day and we've assumed that we have done everything, only to realize, oh, this most important thing, I was right there next door,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and realize that you have to go back out the next day to get what was supposed to be number one
Yeah.
on your priority. Set your priorities, put the most important items at the top of your list. So, what it is, whether it's banking or whether it is meeting for a special event or activity. Um, but then thirdly, it's a very critical one. Avoid perfectionism.
Yeah.
Perfectionism, it's really a weakness. Um, do things with excellence, right? So there's a whole world of our God is a God of excellence.
That's right.
Whatever He has done, whatever He does, we see it as an act of excellence in creation, in redemption, in the activity of the world today.
Even when he rose from the dead, he folded the cloth that he was wrapped in and he put it in
Absolutely.
neatly.
Perfectly set aside neatly. Yeah.
Excellence.
Yes. Yeah. Excellence.
Mm-hmm.
Perfection may be an outcome that you need to avoid if it takes too much time. So um, you have to determine how much time you give into an activity as well,
Mm-hmm.
because we can focus so much on the finest details that by the time we have finished one activity or one project, we don't have time for the other
Mm-hmm.
because we want it to look so perfect. We wanted it to be so different and unique. And nothing is wrong with excellence.
Mm-hmm.
But perfectionism attitude is where we would have a struggle
Mm-hmm.
because sometimes perfectionism comes out of our own self image and pride, even in comparison and contrast to others as well.
Okay.
So that's an important distinction to make, that you're expected to do things excellently and do things with a spirit of excellence as God has given us. And then number four, question yourself, habits or emotions to keep you from eliminating items from your calendar and your list if it doesn't work to get, if you want, you need to get rid of it. So just don't take activities, don't take your list and without questioning it. Why am I doing this activity? For what purpose?
Mm-hmm.
And so it brings into question motives.
Right.
What
Definitely.
motivates you to do something? And
Mm-hmm.
we can't judge another person's motives. Only the individual understands, why am I involved in this organization?
Mm-hmm.
What is my motive for being here, um, for being involved in this project, or in this organization, or this church, or this company, or even in this government? Why am I here? So you have to judge your own motive and determine whether it's a clear,
Mm-hmm.
genuine, pure motive in terms of what we do.
Yeah.
So question, and then in what we do cause tension. Life is built of tension. It is not a smooth path.
Mm-hmm.
So don't let stress paralyze you.
Mm-hmm.
Let it move you to your goal. Many times, tension can help improve your focus.
True.
It enables you to do the job more
Very
effectively.
true. Very true.
So everything being tension. Some of the greatest speakers, they may look very confident on a platform to speak,
Mm-hmm.
but there's
Mm-hmm.
always a tension there still,
Yeah.
and that is a happy tension
Yeah. Yeah.
because it prevents you from becoming proud and boastful
Definitely. Very
and,
true.
and self-confident.
That's
And
right.
so there's always a room for the flips and the turns and the curves
Mm-hmm.
that throw these curveballs at us, even the best of our presentation and preparation. So
Mm-hmm.
there's good tension there, but paralyze you though. It should be productive tension
Yeah.
that says to you, we can do this better. And avoid clutter. Look at your desk right now. Look at your workspace right now. Well, I know at Hope FM everything is in place and everything has to be in
Yes.
place
Yes.
for the kind of work that is done.
Mm-hmm.
But you have been into some people's office and you can't see their face
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because right in front of you are piles of files that
Mm-hmm.
is higher than
Mm-hmm.
the person. So you're looking between the files. This person to have an eye contact. I'm not sure how those people function, but
Yeah.
avoid clutter.
Yeah.
Clutter will get in the way of what you're doing. By
Mm-hmm.
putting everything in its proper place, you won't waste time um, searching for things. So they tell us that some of the most productive meetings is basically one folder on your table.
Mm-hmm.
uh, so, basically that's you've seen productive business and efficient businessmen and women
Mm-hmm.
come to a meeting and it is not, you know,
Mm-hmm.
20 files.
Mm-hmm.
Perhaps that's what the secretaries have to deal with before
Yep. Yep.
the
Yep.
leader comes to the meeting.
Yes, that's true.
Yeah. So get rid of the clutter. It gives you clarity in your own thinking.
That's right. It affects
And
you in how you think, as you just said. You just said it. There is a psychological effect when you have
and
things clean or, you know, otherwise.
right, yes. And then avoid procrastination.
Mm.
There's a sense of procrastination in all of us that we could do it tomorrow,
True.
or we could put it off till next week,
Mm-hmm.
next month. So we all wrestle with that.
Mm-hmm.
First easy things and fun things come afterwards. So do the hard things first,
Mm-hmm.
the heavy lifting first, and then we could deal with the fun. But as we said in one of our discussions, is that let of your company organization. How does fun and laughter integrate into what you do? If you don't enjoy what you're doing, you're basically not the most productive person.
True. Very true.
Control interruptions and distractions. Minimize the amount of time that people take away from your main objective. So you have some control of how you manage interruptions. Of course, there's for interruptions in the middle of something that you're doing. There is an emergency,
Mm-hmm.
and so how do you manage that? And how do you manage the distractions? So those are some critical things. Staff your weakness. All of us have areas of weakness.
Mm-hmm.
Know your strengths as a leader and comply um, other staff members and volunteers. So the the company, the organization, the church, the business
Mm-hmm.
understand where they are weak in particular areas and find the persons that can staff their weakness. So that you strengthen your organization, you strengthen your company, your church, your government, um, because you know where you're weak. And so that's an assessment that you have to do for yourself as well. What are the areas that I'm not good at? And find the people that can staff those weaknesses so that whatever you do
Mm-hmm.
um, becomes a strong project or stronger company or church. And
Mm-hmm.
then use a calendar. Organizing your days will help you save time and prioritize tasks. So
Mm-hmm.
calendars are accessible everywhere. It's on your phone.
Mm-hmm.
Good. To-do list is on your phone. A task list is on your phone. And so it's easily accessible. You have a meeting, it's in your calendar, it pops up, you get notification that you have a Zoom call
Mm-hmm.
schedule at a particular time. So utilize the tools in order to put it on your calendar. If it's not on your calendar, it doesn't get done.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's a whole new discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Put things on your calendar
Yeah.
as Christian leaders, as family leaders. If we don't put our spouse on our calendars, unfortunately, it doesn't get done sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
The meetings, the discussions, the family discussions get left out. And they recommend from the marriage and family counselors set up an appointment, put it in your calendar to meet if you are married, spouse, or if you have children, to set up an appointment. Just the same way you set up an appointment that you feel is important
Yeah.
to have these discussions.
Mm-hmm. So we have been for the past 59 minutes having a wonderful discussion on priorities and decision. Again, I want to thank everyone locked on upon the radio. If you're listening to us on our platforms, YouTube and Facebook, and those of you joined us across the internet in the United Kingdom, across the United States, Dominica, Grenada, we appreciate your presence here with us this morning. Reverend John, before we shut it off for today, oftentimes, there is a disparity in our vision or our priorities and the Lord's priority. Could you again just, show or tell the listeners how important it is to prioritize God's way or to
Great.
have the
So
right priorities?
that's it. Sure. That's the starting point as from a biblical perspective, from a Christian perspective, that we find our calling
Mm-hmm.
from God's perspective. And there's a great book that we have talked about called, the book is simply titled The Call.
Right.
by Os Guinness, and he is one of the foremost writers on business calls and ministry as well. The book is simply called The Call. What is God's call upon you and
Mm-hmm.
upon your life as an individual? Um, so you don't want to miss that
Right.
as the priority for your life. You understand that God has made you for particular calling, and He has given you so many years of life on this planet.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you utilize the time that God has given you in order to fulfill that? And sometimes you may struggle with understanding that calling, but there's always time to go back. We talked last week about the processes. One was that of bringing a birth to vision, vision to birth, rather.
Mm-hmm.
And the first step was intimacy
Mm-hmm.
that takes place between a husband and wife to bring forth a child.
Mm-hmm.
In the similar way, the sense of intimacy with God, um, it is so critical to go to that place. The seclusion, the private moments with you and your God,
Mm-hmm.
and to hear what He has to say to you.
Mm-hmm.
We must first hear from God before we can speak to others. So that's the starting point, and God is always ready
Mm-hmm.
to listen and is patient with us. Sometimes we have avoided those times when we can hear and understand what is the true purpose, what is the true um, calling that we have been designed for, and what we have been created for. So that's the starting point of understanding that basic sense of where we ought to be and how do we get there, and how do we function in that role of leadership with the sense of a divine call that comes from the Creator, God who made us into His image and into His likeness.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you very much again, Reverend John. And from all of this, we should come to the conclusion that we have to take deliberate steps in setting on the right priorities. And we're not alone. We have help from the Word of God. We have help from the Word that shows us the example of Jesus and many other great men who would have prioritized. Reverend John, it has been a blessing being with you another Wednesday morning, and I'm sure a lot of our listeners are there was one who shared that they're blessed. Let me get that message. Yes, they said blessing to you and Rev. It's an awesome topic. So that is an indication that listeners are learning and enjoying the information shared. Any last words before we sign off for today?
Great. So there are three things, 3 pointers for self-evaluation. One is that what is required of me?
Mm-hmm.
What is required by God of me?
Mm-hmm.
Uh, when you feel overwhelmed by obligations, stop and sort out what you must do.
Mm-hmm.
So perhaps you're overwhelmed with all the things that are there. It's a great time to stop, to pause, to reflect, and to go back to the starting point. And then, what gives the greatest return? When sorting out our priorities, ask the question, what gives me the greatest result?
Mm-hmm.
That's what really the priorities bring to us. And then, what gives me the greatest reward? As
Mm-hmm.
you sort through personal priorities, look at the element of personal fulfillment. God provides deep satisfaction where He has gifted and called you to do. Nothing is easier than neglecting the things that you don't want to do. As you draw near to God and God given mission, you'll experience deeper fulfillment. And so we are rewarded when we find our place and our fulfillment, and we locate our call and purpose and function in these challenging times. And so we have to come back to our priorities as to make the best decisions for
Mm-hmm.
ourselves, for those to whom we serve as well.
Mm-hmm. Praise the Lord. Thank God for such rich and wealthy information. And we look forward to a wonderful session next Wednesday, God's will. And Reverend John, we pray God's continued blessing on you as you continue to take us through leadership and do leadership God's way. So, thank you for joining us today, listeners. It was a pleasure being here with you, and I encourage you to enjoy the balance of your day. Have a blessed day, Reverend John. Thanks for being here.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you very much.
All right. Bye bye.
Bye bye. God bless you.
Okay.